Death gives you choices sometimes, and Captain Ivan Petrov's choice came at 23:47 on December 4, 1952, when his MiG-15 started breaking apart at 8,000 feet over Siberia. Burn with the plane or freeze in the wilderness below. He chose freezing. The ejection seat fired at 7,200 feet, cracking two ribs and blasting him into -40-degree air. For 3 seconds, he watched his plane spiral down trailing fire. Then the parachute opened, and he was descending into white hell. Endless snow, black forests, no lights, no roads, no sign humans had ever existed here. He hit ground at 23:49, buried in a snowdrift, clawed his way out, gasping air cold enough to freeze his lungs. The parachute hung in trees 30 meters away. Training kicked in. Get it? It's your only shelter. He waded through waist-deep snow, broken ribs screaming, hands already numb. Emergency pack contents. One flare, one knife, matches, chocolate bar. That was everything between Ivan Petrov and death. He tried starting a fire, matches wouldn't light. Too cold, hands shaking too badly. 20 minutes trying before accepting it wouldn't work. Survival meant parachute and body heat and staying awake because sleep at -40 means not waking up. First night was endless, cold so intense it became pain. Dawn came at 09:23 and he was still alive. He decided to find the crash site, salvage supplies, 4 hours wading through snow with broken ribs. The MiG was scattered wreckage across 200 meters. Nothing useful survived, just a piece of wire he took without knowing why. Getting back to shelter exhausted him completely. That's when understanding hit. He couldn't walk out. 300 kilometers in this condition. Impossible. Only chance was staying put, conserving energy, waiting for rescue that might never come. And if rescue didn't come, he had maybe 2 weeks before starvation killed him. Day 3, the hunger started screaming. Ivan rationed the chocolate carefully, 1 piece daily, melting it slowly because chewing might break teeth. Gone by day 4. After that, nothing. He tried pine bark, stripped it with the knife, chewed until gums bled. No nutrition, just illusion of eating. Pine needles next, making bitter tea that might prevent scurvy if he lived long enough. By day 7, he was noticeably weaker. Standing took longer. Thinking took longer. His body eating itself for energy. Day 10, he looked at the parachute differently, not as shelter, as food. Silk is protein, indigestible protein, but his brain didn't care. He cut a small strip, 10 centimeters long, chewed slowly. It didn't help nutritionally, but eating something quieted the hunger temporarily. By day 15, eating parachute became routine, small strips from the bottom, preserving shelter integrity. He knew his body couldn't digest it, knew it was worthless. But the ritual mattered psychologically more than nutrition. Hallucinations started day 18. Movement in peripheral vision, voices in wind, the smell of his wife's cooking so vivid and real, he cried. His dead mother appeared day 20, telling him it's okay to stop fighting. He knew she wasn't real, but talked to her anyway. He talked to himself constantly. Childhood stories, flight training memories, promises his wife was waiting, anything to stay sane. By day 25, he wasn't sure he believed anymore. The parachute was smaller. He'd eaten a third of it. Smaller parachute meant less insulation, meant more energy needed, meant more hunger, meant eating more parachute. The cycle tightened like a noose. Day 30, a rabbit appeared. White, perfect. Ivan lunged desperately, missed, tried again, missed. Watched it disappear into trees. He sobbed after, full body crying that hurt his ribs and wasted energy, but proved he was still human enough to break completely. Day 35, he started bargaining with God or fate or whatever controls these things, promising to be better, kinder, grateful if he could just survive this. By day 40, Ivan weighed maybe 45 kilograms. Started at 73, lost 40% of his body weight, skin hung loose where muscle used to be, ribs visible through flight suit, face hollow, skeletal. He looked at his reflection in melted snow and didn't recognize himself. The parachute was half gone now, wearing some of it, eating pieces, wrapping his frost-bitten feet that had gone black at the toes. Day 47 felt different, like something had shifted, like maybe he'd actually survive. He fired the flare, the one he'd saved 47 days, sent it arcing into gray winter sky, bright orange against white, a signal that said, "I'm here, I'm alive! Someone please see me." He didn't know if anyone would. 6 hours later, he heard an engine. The helicopter landed and two men ran toward Ivan, then stopped dead, staring at what they'd found. A skeleton wrapped in shredded parachute, barely alive. The medic knelt with shaking hands, visibly afraid of what he was seeing. Checked vitals with difficulty because Ivan's veins had collapsed from dehydration and starvation. "Name," the medic said gently, not expecting answer. "Captain Ivan Petrov," Ivan whispered. They loaded him into the helicopter. Thermal blankets felt like fire against frozen skin. IV took 3 tries to place. The medic asked questions. "How long? What did you eat? Can you feel your feet?" Ivan answered when he could, stayed silent when he couldn't. Flight to hospital took 90 minutes. Ivan drifted in and out of consciousness, processing that he'd actually survived 47 days in conditions that should have killed him in 48 hours. The hospital was aggressively warm, warm enough to hurt, his frozen nerves waking up screaming. They sedated him to keep the IV in place. He woke 12 hours later to doctors discussing frostbite, starvation, amputation probabilities. His wife arrived day 2, walked into the room and stopped, staring like she was seeing a ghost. She didn't cry, never been a crier, but her hands shook when she touched his face, when she whispered she'd been preparing for a funeral, not a reunion. "I ate my parachute," Ivan said, because apparently that's the first thing his brain wanted to share. She laughed until she was crying, holding his hand, telling him he was an idiot, and she loved him and he was never flying again. Never. She didn't care about his career or duty to the Soviet Union. The doctors saved 8 of his toes. He lost 2 to frostbite that went too deep, tissue that died while he was eating silk and talking to hallucinations. Lost 3 fingers, pinky and ring finger left hand, middle finger right hand. They told him he was lucky. Most people with his exposure lose more. Ivan didn't feel lucky, felt like he'd traded pieces of himself for survival. Like the forest took its price, even though he escaped. The Soviet Air Force wanted to debrief him, wanted everything documented, analyzed, filed as lessons learned. Ivan told them everything except the hallucinations, except the moments he wanted to give up, except the rabbit that made him cry. Some things aren't for official reports. Some things are just between you and the wilderness that didn't kill you. They asked if he wanted to fly again once his hands healed, once he was strong enough, once psychological evaluation cleared him. Ivan said no, clearly, firmly, finally, done with flying, done with risking his life, done with situations where survival depends on eating your equipment. They accepted his resignation, gave him pension, medal for exceptional endurance in extreme conditions, ceremony where generals shook his remaining fingers and praised his Soviet spirit, completely missing the point that survival wasn't about spirit or ideology, was just about being too afraid of dying to accept it as inevitable. Ivan went home to Moscow, got an administration job, lived quiet life, had 2 children who grew up hearing the story of how their father survived 47 days in Siberia, ate his parachute, lost fingers and toes, came back anyway. He never told them about the rabbit, about crying when it got away, about the deals he tried making with God. Some stories are just for the person who lived them. 20 years later, Ivan Petrov stands in front of 200 young pilots at Moscow Aviation Institute. He's 49, graying, missing 5 digits, walking with a limp. They want to hear about 47 days from someone who actually lived them. "The question everyone asks," Ivan begins, "is how I survived, what techniques I used, what I did right." He pauses, decides to tell truth instead of comfortable version. "I survived because I was too stupid to die on schedule. The manual says 48 to 72 hours. I should have died day 3. I didn't because I didn't know I was supposed to. Just kept choosing survive until tomorrow. Eventually tomorrow became 47 days and rescue found me." He shows hospital photographs, skeletal, barely human, prove the body can consume itself almost completely and still function if will to live is strong enough. "I ate my parachute, silk, indigestible, nutritionally worthless. I ate it anyway because my brain needed to believe I was eating something." The ritual mattered more than the nutrition. He tells them about hallucinations, his dead mother appearing, telling him it's okay to give up, his wife appearing, telling him opposite, the rabbit that got away and made him cry like a child. The survival manual doesn't prepare you for that, doesn't prepare you for when your brain starts breaking, when isolation and starvation start dismantling who you are. He tells them on day 42 he seriously considered not surviving. considered that dying might be easier than continuing. What changed your mind? Someone asks from the audience. Ivan thinks. Spite, pure anger. I was angry at the forest for trying to kill me, angry at myself for the navigation error. I decided I wasn't going to let anger be the last thing I felt. I was going to survive out of pure spite, live long enough to be angry about normal things. The lecture ends. The cadets applaud. A few approach with technical questions about fire starting and shelter construction. Ivan answers what he can, mostly thinks about how lucky they are that they don't understand yet, don't know yet. Still believes survival is about technique instead of stubbornness. That evening he goes home to his family. His daughter does homework at the kitchen table, his son watches television, his wife cooks dinner, and the smell hits Ivan the way it sometimes does, suddenly, viscerally, reminding him of 47 days when food was hallucination instead of reality. He doesn't tell them this, doesn't tell them that 20 years later, the smell of cooking still sometimes makes him emotional. They eat dinner together. His daughter talks about school, his son talks about football, his wife talks about work. Ivan listens and contributes and is present in the way you're present when you've survived something impossible and now every normal moment feels like borrowed time. After dinner, he goes to the bedroom closet, pulls out a box from the top shelf. Inside is a piece of silk parachute, maybe 20 centimeters square, dirty white, torn edges, stained with things that might be blood or dirt or both. It's the piece he kept. The piece he didn't eat, didn't use for shelter, brought home from Siberia, and has carried for 20 years as reminder that he survived something impossible. He holds it for a moment, puts it back, closes the box. Goes back to his family, back to normal, back to the life he bought with 47 days of eating parachute and refusing to die on schedule. Some people collect medals or trophies. Ivan Petrov collects moments when he remembers he's alive, when he remembers that alive isn't guaranteed, is just what happens when you're too stubborn or too lucky or too spite-driven to accept the alternative. And maybe that's enough. Maybe survival doesn't need to mean something beyond itself. Maybe 47 days of eating parachute bought Ivan Petrov the rest of his life, and the rest of his life, normal and ordinary and beautifully boring, is exactly what all that suffering was for.